Give us your first experience of COBRA. And listen, let's just locate it, because when I did it, it was always underground in one buildings. But was it in a different place when you were going to COBRA meetings?
Rory, I think that's information that could be deemed useful to an enemy.
Oh, well, you take it all out then. So I suppose at its heart, what COBRA is the formal mechanism for crisis management in government, chaired by the Prime Minister, or in the Prime Minister's absence, the Senior Cabinet Minister, there to bring together all the different bits of government and get on top of a crisis.
But just so listeners know, COBRA stands for Cabinet Office Briefing Room A. It's not named after a wild snake. I suspect it's changed a lot even since my time, and even since your time as well, because, of course, this stuff is advancing all the time.
One of the things that I did think is that actually it was very criticised in its early days, and it's been running, right from the 70s. But I think by the time I got there, was beginning to tighten up. I was quite impressed by the group of civil servants who staffed it. Civil Contingency Secretariat. They'd had real training in crisis management. I actually got one of them in to talk to my class at Yale about how you do crisis management. And it was, my strongest memory of it was during the days of the floods, where they were always able to get the most up-to-date information up on the screens. We were able to get the fire service, the police around the table, and strategic communications people, the key strategic communications people, the key spending departments, to make sure that we could really make decisions. So I thought it actually was one of the few cases in government where I really thought it was government done properly staffed, proper committees, and it's actually how I would like to run a crisis response.
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting about this TV series about it is, although it's television and it's obviously wants to look dramatic and have that sense of it being a thriller and so forth, there is something kind of exciting is the wrong word, but that when you go into those meetings, it kind of really matters, because they only really happen when it is either something that's unexpected or something that's become a crisis. So if I think of some of the situations that we were involved in that required it, obviously several military situations, but also 9/11, probably the most dramatic of all. And that I seem to remember was one where actually there was kind of standing room only, because there was so many people who felt that the people felt had to be there. You had all the security services, quite a few of the police forces, transport, infrastructure, all sorts of different people, foreign policy, diplomats. It was a pretty crowded room. And it was almost like, there was a sense of that this has the potential to be a really profound crisis, and therefore an awful lot has to be gripped very, very quickly. And the thing about having a place where all the information flows into a central place, I think in a crisis you need that.
And knowing who you've allocated it to. There's a very funny but slightly disturbing piece by Jonathan Evans, who was the head of MI5, which we can share, which he wrote for RUSI, about the lessons he took from government, how not to manage a crisis, which is about all the classic problems that we saw, including things like optimism bias and the ways in which, you convince yourself you don't want it to happen on your watch, and government often tends to be too slow to react. So one of the things in those meetings is absolutely vital to push people to look at the worst case scenario, make the decisions, deploy the resources, rather than the temptation, which is, maybe the problem will go away on its own. We don't want to waste any resources, but just get on top of it as soon as you can.
That's that definitely, when you were saying that what came straight into my head was the way that we handled foot and mouth. I think we wanted to feel that it was better than it was, and that maybe we didn't do that sort of early stage catastrophizing and imagining the worst and then trying to prevent it from happening. So we spoke about what it's like to deal with the crisis at the heart of government, the toll it can take on you, even a bit on how COBRA came about, what it means. So now we've been able to shed some light on what it's like behind the scenes. We've hopefully whetted your appetite for a bit of drama, and I think the TV show makes a great pairing.
And it's one of those really glossy, expensive-looking productions we do so well nowadays on British TV. Political thriller starring Robert Carlyle as the Prime Minister. I would say it provides a bit of proper escapism and maybe sometimes puts a bit of glamour into government, but it's actually remarkably well researched. And all the major themes are things viewers will recognise from the political debates we're having every week on the podcast. In fact, I have a vested interest here, because I remember one of the researchers very politely reaching out to me and trying to work out whether they'd got it right. So in this series, they're focusing on environmental terrorism, anti-protest bills passing through Parliament, and the quandary for the PM at the heart of all this, which is the existential question, how much is he willing to sacrifice to remain in power?
One of our regular themes, Rory, on the age of impunity. What will the Prime Minister and his government do when tensions run high? Can they stick to their principles?
So if you're up for something exciting to watch tonight, all episodes of Cobra Rebellion are available on Sky and Now.